Thanks everyone for coming here. I think this is going to be a super interesting panel. My name is Jordi. I'm the founder and CEO at Smadex. We're a mobile performance DSP. And in that role, I meet tons of people that want to bring programmatic strategies to their companies. And so I'm sitting down here with professionals from 3 verticals, each in different stages of programmatic transition or exploration. If you are thinking of taking this step, going programmatic, these are the guys to listen to. And I can tell you that in addition to being 3 amazing professionals, they are really, really cool guys. I've been speaking with them some more time, some less time, but they're all amazing. So take your time to listen to them and then also talk to them after the panel if you want to learn more about programmatic. So I'm going to give you 1 minute, each one of you, to introduce yourselves. So maybe starting with you, Sergio.
I'm Sergio. I work at Flixbus, which anyone who's in Germany has seen our green buses. I work on the mobile marketing side of it, so pushing the app. I take care of the ad networks and DSPs, and I've been at the company about 1 year.
Hi, my name is Tom. I work for Delivery Hero, and I do the mobile marketing side. Mostly we're pushing food ordering apps, and I hope we can all relate to that. And we've been running Programmatic for a while now.
Hey guys, I'm Palau. I work for Innogames. It's a mobile app developer for games here in Germany. We're pretty much the biggest developer in Germany. We market games globally, both in desktop and mobile, and happy to be here.
Very nice. So, okay, so I'm gonna ask several questions, maybe one to each of you, and I'm gonna let the person that I asked the question to explain more, and then, being conscious of time, the others to just make little comments after that. So starting with you, Sergio, when and why did you decide that you needed to get into programmatic?
So when I joined the team about 1 year ago, we were buying mostly, or basically only on ad networks. And the problem there is we didn't really know much of our users, so a lack of transparency about where they were coming from, the performance on the creative side, a lot of reasons that we were like, we want to have this data because we can do a lot more with this data than just getting installs from nowhere. So the transparency, the scalability that we have on programmatic was the reason we wanted to move into it. Also because we wanted to scale this side away from only doing the big Facebook and Google and just have that black box. Nice. And do you guys want to comment something about when and why did you decide to transition?
Yeah, I suppose we started about a year ago as well. And initially for us, it was just a test. But it was important for us to get that transparency. We'd had some problems with fraudulent activity in our campaigns prior. So once we tested it, we thought that due to the transparency, we'd be able to easily pinpoint, instead of getting a source ID, we've got the actual app name, we'd be able to pinpoint where the fraud comes from and blacklist it. And so far it's been successful, and yeah, we're going to continue to scale it up.
Yeah. Amazing. And you?
We've been running DSP for quite a long time, some years already, especially on the desktop side, and everything's so good, buying mainly premium inventory, but there was a point in which Google and Facebook, basically, we reached diminishing returns, so we had to move to another channel, and that's when we started to push more in-house in DSP. We buy it as well from networks, obviously, like any gaming company, but we want to gain transparency into that.
Okay. Good. There's actually going to be questions on points that you've discussed already on transparency and multiple partners, so I'm going to give you a chance to explain yourselves a lot on that. So following on with you, Pau, so what advice would you give to another company that is considering starting in programmatic?
Well, the first thing I would say is you have to get management on page. They have to understand that this is not a quick win. It's a long-term decision. It's an investment. And it's normally one of the main problems that we face, that actually management can say, hey, what's going on? It's a long time investment. Apart from that, I would say basically the DSPs you have to scan the whole DSP landscape, which is huge, it's almost infinite. But I would say you have to focus on 2 topics inside the DSPs, basically the algorithm and the QPS, the traffic they're actually listening to. So taking those into account, if the tech stack fits your needs, then I would just go for one of those. And to give you one advice is if it's only mobile, I would stay away from all these omni-channel AAA DSPs like I won't name, but you guys can imagine, because those don't have mobile in their objective. They're mainly shifting to TV and other kind of formats. So if you really want to do mobile, you have to go to a mobile first DSP and find the algorithm that it fits your needs. basically.
It's actually amazing because I had someone came to our booth this morning and asked me exactly that. They were saying that they were working with one of these omni-channel DSPs, and they were asking me why should we work with a mobile only. And I was saying that, but I will find her and I will look for you, and you can explain it to her. It will be more credible than coming from me. So what about you, Tom and Sergio? What advice would you give to another company that is considering starting?
I completely agree. Like it's a long-term thing. It's not a quick win. I think you've got to give it at least 3 months. You've got to give it adequate budget. In the beginning, you're going to go through an exploration or learning phase of programmatic, and you're going to be optimizing towards higher funnel events earlier in the user journey. Maybe you start with like a view vendor or add to cart, and then eventually you get to your conversion event, whatever your KPI is. And so if you run it for 1 month and you don't see great results and then cut it, I don't think it's been a fair test. So it should be a long-term game. And that's important to have management on board, to have it explained what it is properly and the benefits.
Yes, basically that. I mean, we come from a very old-fashioned industry by being very tech-driven still. That aside, you still have to convince people and explain, hey, this is a completely different kind of buying. CPIs might spike. You might be having $20, $30 CPIs for a while, and people will freak out. It's like, don't worry, this is the way this works. This is not Facebook that you just plug and play and any idiot can run it. It needs a learning phase. Awesome.
Hope this is useful for all of you guys, especially if you're considering transitioning to programmatic, which I would love. And so Tom, do you manage multiple programmatic partners, and any advice on how to do that well?
So for user acquisition, I'd say it's always worth having more than one partner. For retargeting, I think there's less need because obviously you're targeting the audience. You know what your audience is that you're targeting. So if you have multiple partners, you will be targeting the same audience. And if you have a good amount of inventory covered on retargeting, you're just going to be bidding against yourself. That doesn't apply if you have a huge retargeting pool. But for user acquisition, again, it's not worth having 5 partners because you'll probably have most of the exchanges and most of the inventory covered, and you don't want to be bidding against yourself, but it's always good to have 2 to test. And you ask them, that's the good thing about programmatic. You can see the transparency of not just what apps you're advertising in, but what exchanges you're on as well. So try and get a wide coverage, and I think that's an important strategy for user acquisition.
What about you, Sergio? You want to comment on multiple partners, or what are your views on it?
Yeah, I mean, like ideally, we were starting, so we started with testing one and one OS against another one in the other OS, worked well, gave the winner the second OS, and now add new partners to the bigger geos, so for in our case Germany, and try to see if there is some incremental gain to it. So if we could have 2 DSPs running and spend 50% more than we could with one, great, let's see if 3. Right now we're not yet there yet, we've still one that works and one that we're testing and just exchanging them, but hopefully we reach that point that we have that incremental gain of maybe putting 3 in them. I don't think more than that makes sense. Just like you said, having 5 is probably overkill.
And actually, just to add to that quickly, if you're running programmatic and non-programmatic partners in the same geo, it's worth noting that you'll probably see maybe worse performance on the programmatic campaign initially in terms of, it depends on what your KPIs are. So it's important to balance that out and maybe to analyze the programmatic and non-programmatic in terms of different KPIs. Maybe look at like a cohort analysis for the programmatic campaigns, see if those customers that you drive programmatically have higher returns on a monthly value. Because if you're comparing them just on conversion events, it may not be, you don't want to compare apple and pears. It may not be equal.
Yeah, the apples to apples thing comes a lot in my conversations, and we could be talking hours, right? Unfortunately, we only have 25 minutes, but I think this is a super interesting topic about the multiple partners and how to compare programmatic with non-programmatic partners simultaneously. So food for thought for discussions after the panel if you guys want. But to continue, Tom, you've talked a little bit about transparency already. How important is transparency in programmatic and for you in this case?
Yeah, actually I think it's one of the main benefits of programmatic. Because you build up, when you just get IDs, you can't blacklist individual apps. You can see a high amount of clicks and then a low amount of installs, and you think, okay, maybe this app is running quite spammy interstitials. You don't really want that. It's not good for your brand. and then you can blacklist apps that you have like fraudulent high amount of rejected installs from. The transparency is very important as well. You can even build up, get an idea of what kind of categories your app has affinity with, and then you can use that. You know, if you know that your app, for example, we're a food delivery app, we have natural affinity with lifestyle apps, but we have less in common with gaming, and these are valuable learnings that you get from the transparency from Programmatic, and we can apply that to all channels.
So you, Sergio, like transparency, how important that is
I
for
mean,
you?
transparency was very important for us. For the one side, we have a very clear brand that is important for us in Germany, and through that, we also know a lot about our customers, so people who actually travel on the buses. Using those learnings, like before we basically got a random app ID numbers, had no idea what kind of apps they were. Now we can either say like we just don't want to be in that kind of inventory, or hey, this kind of inventory just has a higher affinity to our customers. Also, the amount of fraud is something that you can see there, especially in, let's say, does this app, what kind of ads does this app run? Sometimes you have sources that have a very clear feel of this might be incentivized installs, but you just don't know because it's one ID and you cannot pinpoint if that app just runs an offer wall for incentivized installs.
And your view on transparency?
I mean, we buy a lot from the networks, and they are intransparent. There's blind traffic almost. So that's the reason why we also want to do programmatic, in order to be able to understand what's going on there. And regarding to fraud, yeah, it's good to have transparency, but at the end, we use Adjust, so we're covered, let's say.
I would say Adjust doesn't cover everything, you know, but
It's pretty good.
That's another big topic, fraud, that we could discuss about. But let me ask a little bit more on the transparency topic. So something that we discuss internally a lot is, we obviously know about the networks that are not transparent, like completely untransparent. But then, are all DSPs equally transparent, or is there more and less levels of transparency?
Absolutely. Like, for instance, if you want to get the LLD, the log level data, AAA ones would not give that to you, for instance. And we're looking into that data, and yeah, absolutely. It's not just about the app and whatever, it's the log level data that we're looking for.
And you, Tom?
yeah, that's a good point. And also, if you're running programmatic via networks, not all the networks will pass what exchange advertising in as well. They'll pass the app, but not the exchange, and that's important as well. You want to be covered in as many exchanges as possible. You don't want all of your traffic to come from just one exchange. So that's another point.
Yeah, and beyond the exchange, right? Like other information within, like log level. Log level is something for you to analyze, right? But different levels of reporting on information that is at the bid request. Do you guys look at that, and are there different levels of reporting that different DSPs provide?
Yeah, I mean, to get the information from the bid request is very important for us, because sometimes we run campaigns just targeting a specific city, so we need to take that data from the bid request. And it allows us a lot more like granular targeting on a geo level. So yeah, that's a huge advantage of real-time bidding. We'll get all that data live. I mean, the problem is if you're running a campaign, you're just targeting just on a specific city, you know, 50% of the time you won't get that data. So you're going to make sure that you understand that you're not always getting 100% of the data 100% of the time with every bid request in real-time bidding. But most of the time it's invaluable for us.
Nice. Okay, so moving on from transparency, Pau, for you. So in the considerations about deciding between an in-house versus managed programmatic strategy, what are your thoughts?
Well, we first started with managed ones, obviously. Yeah. So we run several of them, and I think it's not one against the other. It's basically both combined. So what we do is we basically run them parallel, manage and self, and we try to extract information from the manage and put it in the self. Unfortunately, it doesn't always work, because it's not the app name or this whitelisting, blacklisting is not the whole thing. As I said, it's the inventory they listen to or the algorithm. So if we don't have the algorithm, I don't care if I have the app name, I'm not going to be bidding what I should be bidding at a certain point. So we run them both together, but just for the learnings. And since we run also several DSPs, yeah, it's a whole combination of the whole thing. And I think it's pretty much a best practice across the board.
And how about the skills you need internally to run in-house? Meaning, so yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense to start with the managed approach and then move to in-house, but is this something that you would recommend for everyone, or what kind of skills you need internally? What the size of the teams that you need for people here that may be considering, yeah, I want to run programmatic, I've never done it. what do I need? Do I need to hire new people? Do I need engineers? What do I need to do that?
I mean, eventually you'll need engineers and data scientists, but that comes down the road. I would say at the beginning you can get just a guy who's doing Facebook, because basically it's a programmatic environment inside a walled garden. If you get that guy or person who is doing Facebook advertising, you should have the skills to start off with it. And then very analytical and using, it has to be very number driven. It's all about that. And specifically, it's equally important that it has to, this appetite for the ad tech industry, because there's so many tools out there, you have to be on top of it, like constantly checking what new apps, what new tech is out there, bidder, whatever solution you're looking for. And that combination is the most important one. It's not just about numbers, because at the end, we're not actually optimizing. It's all the algorithm. And when you go to a meeting, they tell you the algorithm is the best, you have no clue. It's impossible to understand anything. So basically, you have to test and test and test, and that is discovering the whole ad tech landscape, I would say, is one of the most important parts.
And so what about you, Tom? What are your views on bringing it in-house, doing manage, the size of the teams? Can you just run manage and have just one person managing it? Is that okay or not? What are your views on this?
Yeah, I think you're right. You just need one guy to begin with. Facebook is a programmatic environment, and you don't need engineers to begin with, so just get started and try it. It is quite time-consuming. You do need to really understand the platform, and each DSP is quite different in its interface and how you set up the campaigns. And yeah, although there is obviously the machine learning algorithm behind it, which does a lot of it, you still have a lot of optimization to do. And especially if you're using ones that use lots of line items, you've got to put the time in to really understand the DSP. Otherwise, you just won't get good results out of it. For example, we tried the trade desk. It's really good, but we were doing just in-app. And as you said, it couldn't compare in terms of performance to programmatic networks. And we're running multiple apps across multiple geos, and it was quite time-consuming. So for the moment, we're using majority programmatic networks. But as you said, it's always, I think, best practice to have them running in tandem. You can take learnings from one, the DSP, and apply it to the other, or even across other channels. So it's a good point.
Yeah, that's pretty much what we see also. Like, we see a lot of clients that they want to start manage, and then they want to move to in-house, and it's best. The best combination is when you actually can have interesting conversations between the experts in your company and the expert in the other company, discussing strategy more than optimization. That's when you get most out of it. So that ties perfectly with the last question for you, Sergio. So what do you have planned for next year? Are you going to take programmatic strategy? Are you going to do it in-house, manage? What are your thoughts on how to take on programmatic for 12 months from now?
So from our side, what we want to do is, first of all, keep growing it. So it is not yet most of the spend that we have on non-Facebook and Google. The idea is to basically choke out ad networks to a point that we can rely more on DSPs, on the programmatic side, be 2 partners, be 3 partners at the beginning. Right now, we're still doing everything managed. So we want to move it in-house. Obviously, that then, right now, there's, like they say, the one guy, that's me. Ideally, at one point, someone else coming on board, or just that being the only thing that I'm taking care of, and then see if we can pull it in-house, see what we can use, what we can learn. At the end of the day, we're a pretty big company full of a lot of tech people, so a lot of the programmatic partners, they do a lot of chest pumping, how we have so much tech, and they have the algorithm, the machine learning, and it's so complex, and you couldn't possibly fathom how much data they have. But it's like, yes, we do too. We have 400 IT people. I'm sure one of them is able of doing this as well. So like, we have that in-house. We just need to reprioritize and reshuffle. And that is a future thing. But obviously, before we then say to someone, hey, do the same thing you guys did for bidding on SEA on Google side, for us, we need to prove that, hey, this is something that we can scale and start spending a lot, which we are not yet.
Nice. And what about you? What are your thoughts for next year? What are your plans on programmatic?
I think it's going to be a great year next year, basically. And basically, I think there's a lot of things going on in the industry. Basically, the networks now, they have to change. They've been selling all these years in historical CPMs. Basically, they calculate the historical CPM within 1 week, and then they put you on the waterfall. This is all going to change. It's going to be now real-time bidding for everyone. We see header bidding coming in. We see Atos TXT coming in. A lot of interest in tech that will eventually happen. First price auction by Google. So a lot of things going on. We think the networks will probably be hurt, and it's a good moment. On our part side, us as Innogames, we've been testing several DSPs, and we're now testing a bidder solution, bidder as a service, which is a very interesting solution. We think that could work out. And we are eventually trying to build our own algorithm. We are looking into it and checking also companies who actually provide third-party algorithms that we can plug in. So there's a lot of things going on right now. This is an industry that's blooming. So we hope to see, we believe it's a window of opportunity right now in the industry. And yeah, we're ready for it.
Amazing. Super happy to hear all that. So how about you? What are your plans for next year in terms of programmatic?
Yeah, our plans are to scale up programmatic, and we're switching towards more of a programmatic percentage in our spend, and also to test more in-house. We want to test a few more DSPs. I think eventually the goal for most companies would be to do the in-house with the algorithm, but we're not there yet. But we'd like to test some AAA DSPs. We've got some down the line.
You should try everything. So that's all I had for you guys. I think the answers were really amazing, and I think there's like a lot of topics that we touched that would be super interesting for all of you, especially those that are looking into programmatic next year. And I think all of us are going to be here around in the hall after this, so feel free